school, whatever it is, we've worked on it, and we have a good sense for how land use works within community and county. The second thing I note to you is the last bullet point there. I feel real fortunate to have served on the Wichita County Metropolitan Area Planning Commission, which is a joint planning board such as yours, for the past 12 years. And have looked at hundreds and hundreds of cases over the years. But part of that is serving on the subdivision committee and looking at all the plans, the vacation cases, anything related to land development. I've had a chance to be involved in, along with the recent comprehensive plan done there for City of Wichita and Southern County.
During while I was doing that, I was on the board of zoning appeals for Wichita after I left as director for 15 years. So I'm just saying you, okay, now, these are the subjects we picked out. Take a look at that, you see that. And this last one will be your list to go over. Okay, next slide. Okay, beginning of the comprehensive plan. Next slide. All right, now, what you have in this is the statutes for all of this. So if you need to look up something later on, particularly the planning commission, whatever, all of what we're talking about statutorily is either in this supplement or volume 1. 95% of the law that we're talking about is in these two books. Now, they tell me you don't have a law library here?
We do.
Kevin?
We do.
You do?
We do. Whatever we get to.
Okay. These laws, if you're zoning on these two books, that's 95% of what we're going to show you. Now, this tells you about adopting your comprehensive plan. We're going to show you what notifications you have to give. But this is the third one, is the real problem. Conformance to public improvement to the plan. Once you adopt a comprehensive plan, and if you're going to build a public improvement, you have to refer that to the planning commission and see how it meets the plan. Everybody hear that? In other words, if you're going to build a new library, you have to refer to the book. It doesn't talk about the library, but if it refers to something about the library being built in certain place, whatever, you forward it to the governing body, and if you don't agree with it, you can vote unanimously and change it. But that's something you've got to be doing even now. That hasn't been done. All right. What I talk about is the comprehensive plan talks about subdivision regulations. As if they were in place and you're working on them. We haven't found them, Christian, right? Linda, we haven't found them.
I don't think they were ever part of the original regulations.
And this is just typical of some of the problems that you're running into. So you don't have, and then we talk about, whether it's worth you having them. Now, zoning presumes reason. If you have a zoning case, you're going to change from R1 to R3 or something like that. Zoning district. And if it talks about it in the comprehensive plan as being logical and you do it, and you go to court, I'm sorry, Mr. County Attorney, you just do that and then you sit down. Because it's automatically approved by the jury. In other words, it meets, anytime you do zoning, that meets the plan of your act. So you see how important it is to write a plan that does that. How much trouble it would be. In other words, the other people have to prove it's wrong or something. But your county attorney, it's pretty easy. Okay, next up. I think David, you can go through.
Yeah, so I'm going to pick up on comprehensive planning. This listing here, if you were to look at that 12-747 statute, there's a laundry list in there of the items that are supposed to be within the comprehensive plan. And that's how these develop, those particular items. That's a traditional process. Today's topic is public awareness and no one is showing. That is a challenge in planning. So what we often do when you work on a comprehensive plan is we recommend that folks consider developing a steering committee. For example, you all can become a steering committee real instantly to work on a comprehensive plan. You look for those key folks that know the economics of the community, know the schools, know the different things on how the community works. But public awareness is a big item in comprehensive planning. And I just mentioned, about public engagement, community input, but you can see those various groups. It's important to go out, for example, down in Winfield, finished up a plan there recently, is they went out and talked to the developers. In fact, for Wichita County, we had a whole meeting for that, to talk to developers. Vision and policies. The current plan does a really good job of setting up some goals and knowing the policy items within it. What would be important to do is to go a step further and begin to think about, well, what are the strategies of what you do to create that goal? But if you're not going to have that strategic portion of the planning process, then you're just not quite there on it. We've got some plans you can come and look at when we're down here as examples. But here's what we're doing. Folks in the comprehensive planning process, they want to talk about quality of life. They want to talk about how they live in their community and how they go about day to day. And what's interesting is if you study each of these items, they eventually come talk about, let's see, low cost of living and affordable housing. Well, that's your housing component. But yet you need to talk about population so you can understand what you need about housing, the demographics on board. How many are familiar with the term sustainability? You heard it? It's an important topic, but yet the key note there is means we plan and act in ways to assure long-term viability of communities, economy, and so forth. It's that planning piece. For example, if you like what you got to plan for it. Otherwise, it will erode away. In fact, we've had the last two comprehensive plans we worked for, the administrators brought up, if you're not growing, you die. And if you're struggling like that, you got to plan for it. So you can preserve and protect what you got and way of life. Another big topic in comprehensive planning right now is health. And could have brought you a whole bunch of charts, United States graphics and everything about the obesity epidemic around the United States, but it's more than that. People want to talk about walkability, how they can be out in their communities to get around and be helping on that. This COVID, crazy COVID thing has brought to the forefront the importance for being outdoors, parks, giving places so folks can go to and be outdoors and improve their health. This is kind of what I was talking about there in terms of taking an element of your plan, whether it's the goals and policies, vision, population, and so forth, but always come back to the concept of something. The plan, when we talk about quality of life, whether it's healthy food options, walkability, aging in place, they fall back to an element that helps you develop a viable, comprehensive plan. It boils down to, once you work through a plan and are getting finished up, this is the process for getting it approved. And there's the two key things to note here are look at the planning commission and governing body. That 12-747 statute charges the planning commission to make or cause to be made that comprehensive plan. And so the planning commission is the body that you go to and work with to fully develop a plan. They hold the public hearing, the official hearing for folks to come in and discuss it before they adopt it. Once the planning commission is done, they pass that on to the governing bodies, and the governing bodies consider it. They are the final approval body to look at comprehensive plan. Any questions? One final thought is it's important to recognize the comprehensive plan as your guide, because it sets the stage for developing your planning tools. What are the planning tools? Your zoning regulations that we're going to be talking about, it sets the guide for that. It also sets the guide for your subdivision regulations and a whole host of other policies that you might consider, for example, floodplain. And we've got the airport documents to consider. Any questions related to comprehensive planning? Now that was the easy part. Now we're getting into the real fun stuff called zoning.
One of the things about a comprehensive plan, we talked to Steve about, we had a conversation for Steve and two other people before this afternoon. And we pointed out to him that he needs a comprehensive plan that would help with economic development. And if it's possible, if you could put things in that you could give it out to people and use it for that purpose. Okay, here are some of the books to do. And maybe got about three of them. Then there's a lot of these. And you have to decide, we did one for a county, I think it's 20 pages. You can do a simple one. It doesn't cover everything, but it'll do it. But these are for, they have illustration with pictures of the city or county. Okay. Now let's go to zoning context. Now, this one, remember when you leave. Administer and enforcing zoning regulations is nothing like anything else you do in your. Now, why is that? Whose land mostly are you dealing with? Not yours. It's county. And who loses if you do it wrong? Not only the applicant, but you have to pay the money for the court case. in one county, one city, where we were doing helping them, I called the mayor, he called me, and I told him, don't approve the case tonight, the notice is wrong. They went ahead and approved it that night because they had an election on their day. That case went to court for 18 months. And finally, the court came back and said, you know, the two people that didn't get it, they had to know. There were pictures all around, there were words, you know, they couldn't have missed the idea that it was being done. The court never did that. But what happened 2-3 years later? The company from Spain, who had a headquarters in St. Louis, sued the title company who made the list and discovered there were 5 people who didn't get the notice. They sued the title company for $8.4 million. And this is the largest title company in the United States. And they won. And the Supreme Court of Missouri upheld it. $8.4 million for the notification. I'm just saying, you've got to do it right. Okay. These are just some little things that people say and use. They kind of joke about it, but there's a lot of truth to it too. Okay? And look at the next one. How would you like to have that ball on top of your city? If you didn't have zoning, they might be able to do that. This could be happening now in Wichita. But can you imagine having a high rise? Would you want to be on the top line? Anyway, look at the job. It says zoning concepts. Now, on the, what we tell the zoning administrator is start a diary. If you've got an odd thing, an unusual thing, start a diary. We did a landfill in the county about 20 years ago. And literally they discovered that I worked with the staff. We checked everything, not twice, 3 times. Was that important? But it ended up to cost $200,000 in law fees. It took almost 2 years to go to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, so I'm trying to emphasize to you how important it is to train the people to do it right. Now, I've suggested that you may kind of see how it's kind of amusing to see all this in the back of you, you see what it is. But you can make one of these pictures, Steve, and put it in the back of your office or something. But the point is that you want to choose to do it right. Because once you sign the permit, or once you approve the case, you can't come back, they start building or whatever, and say, oh, we got it wrong. Now, if they want, they agree with you, that's all right. You can't come back and go say, now you do it. We have one wrong now, or if I signed the permit, they built it, they started right on top of the sewer line. Because they didn't show it like on their plot plan. I didn't know it. So it's built, now we're working on that. Next one. Now, zoning regulations are minimum standards for public purposes. They're not to be things that make it difficult for people. Now, we take some pride in the fact that the ones that we've done, we usually you an idea. This is the zoning regulations of subdivision correction for the city of Inwood, okay? And everything you do in there has to be, we try to make it as flexible as possible. Now, we can write it tougher, but we don't believe in it. Zoning should be something that can get things done, not be, a problem. We just finished one for a city in which the mayor, in fact, just 5 years before somebody had written the regulation. And the mayor said to him, "What's the matter with me?" I sent him 17 pages. I could have done more. Each one of them had was wrong in the section. 17 pages said that was wrong. We're sort of all over. In other words, one we think of flexibility, the accuracy of next up. Now, I'm not going to read all these to you. This is your reading. This is what judges do. Okay? These are the things that the Supreme Court and so forth look at. But as an overall thing is, one, zoning has to be reasonable, and the judge doesn't make a decision on the zoning. He or she makes the decisions on the rules and so forth that you follow. Next slide. So you want to read these. This is how you want the court to. This is your homework. Next time. Okay. Now, your zoning regulations, if we were to write them, we won't mention constitutional rights. But you've got to look over your shoulder to do that. And if you look on this, it says free speech, that's signs. Now, does anybody know what SOV means? Some people know. You know? What is it? Sexually oriented business. Now, why am I telling you that? Because you have to allow it. You take it out of your zone, you have to allow it. But if you put it in your zone, you can regulate it. So zoning can be very useful sometimes. Fifth Amendment of takings, you can approve something and require them to build a street, do this and that, but you can't go out of your way to do it. It has to be fair. Okay. Next time. Remember that. Now, why do I put that? There are a number of people that will look in the zoning book and they'll say, well, I want you to do X, and you don't have it. Well, then they say, I can do it. Right? It's written so that it covers all land use, protection from all land use, the way it can be. Next one. What's the answer to the first question here? An applicant come in and tell you they're going to build a barber shop, and then they put in a mobile home or something, can they do that? Why can they do that? Because you're in the business zone, you might have 20 uses. And they might come to you and say, well, I want to build a quick store. You do another quick store, okay? And when it happens, they build a liquor store. Well, you said it. They have the right to do it. So remember that when you approve a zoning case, it's for everything. And if they, and 2 years later, if they close down the quick store, somebody can build a new. It's already done commercial to do it. So you've got to look at it long range when you do a zoning. Do it right. Next time. When can a property owner transfer? Yes. In other words, if you have commercial in your property, you can sell it for that. It's more than that will come back, right? Now, what do you think of this? If you did that, it's illegal. In other words, you cannot, if somebody came and said they are going to build a quick shop, and you one, the lifeline, you go on to build a liquor store and anything else, and you would make a motion to approve only a quick shop, illegal. You can't bend down to one thing. People have they have all sorts of things. So remember that when you're doing a case, you go down the entire list of what can be done. They can do any one of them. Next time. I'm sorry for you. Wow. Should you hold a hearing? The applicant isn't there? Think about it. Who is the representative? Who is the representative? Who is speaking for a zoning case? In other words, if the applicant didn't show up, you have the decision to not hear it that time. In other words, they are the promoter. And if they're not there, are you promoting it for them? No. So, now occasionally, I want to clarify that. Occasionally you have somebody come, that calls up, they had a car accident on the way. They broke their leg, whatever. They can't get there. But the case might be simple enough that the zoning administrator could explain it and everything. And you might go ahead and approve it and recommend it to the governing body. It happens. So you analyze the situation, but generally you don't hear a case when the applicant doesn't show up. Next. Now, restrictive covenants. If you have zoning, restrictive covenants will not override it. In other words, I remember on the street, when I was director of planning for Wichita, we had somebody wanting to build an apartment, a two-story building on the street that only had a single family house. And then so you can't do that, the restrictive covenant keeps you from doing it. Zoning is separate. You could do it. But the neighbors then could take them to court on the restrictive covenants. Now, a lot of communities this size do not necessarily have a lot of restrictive covenants. They're good if you can do it, but they don't automatically override unless they're enforced. Any questions on that? No? Okay. It used to be in the time that, in the 30s and 40s and 30s, I mean, when we had the Depression, people were building all sorts of things. And in Kansas, people might have a mobile home they wanted to bring in. And they would pass ordinances that they could put the mobile home in, they had to go around all the neighbors and have them sign a petition that they were in favor of. That's illegal. You don't kill all the zoning to all the neighbors. The neighbors, it was not how many or for. I've had a case in Wichita, that it's hard to believe, we had over 600 people either attend or sign against us. And it's built right next to the PMC today. There were reasons for it, there was something good about it. It's not the number of people against it, but it's what they say counts. What's important? Are they saying enough to convince you to do it or not? I remember that. It's not a political thing. You can't. The first case I ever had was in the city in Butler County, 28 years ago. The first case I ever had. I'm training people to go to the hearing. And I said, get there early and sit in front row, first of all. And secondly, at some point, the chairman's going to say, how many do for and how many against? And I told him how illegal it was. Well, sure enough, they finished their case, and at the end of it, said, now, how many of you are for or against? And this is a room filled with people, and people standing around the wall. And he started counting the people around the wall. And some of them were going like this, like, I'm not anything to do with it. And he voted at something like 100 to 2 or something like that. Totally illegal. So it's not how many, it's what they said. Is there any question on that? Okay, let's start. This is the case in Kansas. Says it's not to be based on a plebiscite, meaning a vote of the neighbors. This is the case that affects you. Next slide. And now here's the group. Look at this: 470 people saying no. Now that isn't to say that you might be more concerned about it and study it closer, or something like that. But if it's 400 to 2, all right. David and I work for a land trust in the county. There's a big landfill, stuff coming from Wichita, 1,300 tons a day. We had 214 people at the public hearing. How many people spoke, do you think? There were 67 people there. One person was for it. And he apologized for being for it. But he was working for the Chamber of Commerce and they wanted him to recommend it. And they were afraid it would ruin his business. 66 people spoke against it. It took 4 hours to do it. But it didn't matter, there were 214 people. The planning commission unanimously voted to recommend it. And it's now, it's taking $1 million a year every year. Okay. Next one. Now, the planning commission does not, as the governing body, does not give advisory opinions. You don't have people come to a meeting with the idea that I'd like to build so-and-so, and you think about it and all that. Now, what's the problem with that? The neighbors don't know that. If you're legal. In other words, the planning commission now, I had one time somebody came to the planning commission very properly and wanted to know if the city would build a bridge there so they could visit the dog. That was a logical question. But you're not supposed to come and ask about, I'd like to do so-and-so, and then the planning commission says, that looks pretty good to us. And they have a public hearing. They can't pre-approve it. Next time. Now, what's wrong with the next part? What's that? That's where, how many of you on, hold your hand, how many are on the planning commission? Nobody on the plan. 1, 2, okay. Now, let's say somebody calls you. One of you friend of yours or something like that. I'd certainly be polite to them. You might say, the answer is come to the meeting at 7 o'clock and come down somewhere. In other words, you don't try to prejudge it. You might answer some question like, is there a road next to it or some fact. But you don't give them, well, it looks pretty good or anything like that. You don't do prejudgments. And you thank them for calling. Now, at the meeting, on the checklist for that, the chairman asked, do you have any ex parte discussion? And you say, someone called me about someone. Now, everybody heard about it. So, everybody knows. That's one of the problems of the ex parte, only you know. You see. So, you're not to discuss it. Now, what can you discuss with people? If you have new zoning regulations are written and people want to talk about it, you can do it. They're legislative. But when you talk about a case, it's going to be quasi-judicial. It's going to be a legal question. And you can't go out and talk to people about it. And I'll take a breath now. Do you have any questions on that? I'm either not getting through to you or I am getting through, so I don't know. But you see what I mean? I'm just being tough about it. Zoning, you're dealing with people's property. Next slide. This is what I talked about, prejudgment. In other words, you might talk to the person, particularly a county commissioner, about something. But you don't want to say something like, well, you know how I feel, and you know how I'm voting, something like that. Don't do that. Now, what are examples of conflicts of interest? Let me give you one. Let's say that, Mike, let's say that your mother is in a nursing home, and you have a case to approve the expansion of the nursing home. Do you have a conflict of interest? Probably, you know. And whenever you have a conflict of interest, it doesn't have to be clear, you see, like you're doing the construction. Even the question on it is best to abstain from doing it. Now, I didn't know at the beginning, but when I learned years ago, 48 years ago, other lawyers told me, get up and walk away from the planning commission meeting room. We used to have a fellow in director of planning, and he did billing and everything, and he would evidently have a case, and he would be very consistent. If you really like to stare at. Give me dirty looks, you know. So, leave the table. Go get a drink of water. Next time. Let's see, third examples of the bias. Now, I happen to be I don't really, so I'm not sure I'd be good at a liquor case, right? Might be a question, but that would be, I could be biased. I'm not, I don't think I do, but you see, I should have stayed. There are many other things you can think that you might be biased about. We've had people against wind farms, they're biased about, they don't like to look at them and all sorts of things. So, but you can get the idea, if you're biased, it's best to abstain. Now, what was the last one there? All right, what do you do about it? I told you, you abstain or you get away from the table. Go ahead. All right. The state law says that you have to have bylaws. Now, this is just another example of your problem. You have an agreement, an intergovernmental agreement to create the planning commission. With 5 members, 2 from the city, 3 from the county. And the state law says that you have to have more people to cover the county than you do the city. So you got it right. You have to have at least 5 people to meet the state law, and you have 5. Okay. Now, you've also got the Board of Zoning Appeals, we're going to talk about it more later, on the side, another group. We're going to talk to you about combining. The state law allows you to combine your Board of Zoning Appeals and your planning commission members. We're going to talk more about it. But here's what's interesting. You don't have any bylaws. But some of the items that are in bylaws are in your interlocal agreement. And the interlocal agreement you have, it looks like it's copied from the city, which is fine, I'm with it. But you see what I mean? Because it's part of the problem. The paperwork is mixed up in many ways. So this needs to be straightened out. And one of the first things you need is a set of bylaws which says how you do your work and how you follow the others. In other words, if somebody comes from Colorado and wants to have a hearing, the first thing they'll say, well, how do you conduct a hearing? Oh, no, and you have nothing to talk about. All right, next time. Now, you're all familiar with the Kansas Open Meeting Act. Aren't they having some changes or something they're talking about at the legislature?
Yeah.
I don't know what they are, but okay, now, the zoning, all zoning cases are heard at the Planning Commission and the Board of Zoning Appeals and open meetings. And the open meetings. Now, you can also have a closed session on the case. Now, let me clarify so you know. You have council here and county commissioner. You can have executive sessions. And there are 6 items, employment, buying things and stuff like that. You have 6 items that you can do in executive session. In this, if you're on the Planning Commission, on the Board of Zoning Appeals, you have 1 that allows you to deliberate on the zoning case. You can't vote in closed session. It's illegal. You can't come out and say, we just voted, so we should do it. Now, you get an idea of what you're going to do, but you can't vote on it in the open meeting thing. Now, Having said that, it's important to hold a closed session when you really need it. And I've been around when we've had landfills, but also when we had one difficult well, you said contention. I'm thinking of the dangerous. Hazardous, yeah. When you have hazardous cases. Now, why am I telling you that? I can't believe it, but every hazardous case that I sat in on the closed session, they did it illegally. They were already, to court and everything else. We couldn't talk about that in the public meeting. But I'm just saying, you don't want to overdo closed sessions because that lets the public think that you're hiding everything from them. You see. In other words, selectively use closed sessions when you need it. Okay. And you make a motion just like this. Exactly. Next time. And you see an idea here how it works. And this is true. I mean, I hear this, that people think, right? I see people shaking their heads, so all right, next one. Now, this is going to be kind of hard for you, so think quickly. All right. This is adopted as officially copied and incorporated ordinance so-and-so model code. Whenever you have, like, if you were adopting building code, it would be a model code with 4 inches thick. And you adopt a building code from the company that makes it. The planning commission creates this document as a model code. And then they send it on to the governing body. Now, the governing body can keep it very simple and just say, we approve the model code. Now, if you find some problems with it, you either return it to the planning commission to change it. And say, I haven't changed dog kennel. Or they have to put it in the ordinance. And it's such a problem because you have to write, anytime you make a change, you have to write all the words and publish. So what I'm talking to you about, this is made as a legislative document. You can talk to any neighbor you want to, you can call anybody you want to find out, is this the right thing to do? And later on, when you have amendments, you don't go back and mess up the pages. You can hook it in the back. Say I've got somebody now, what am I changing? It's 2 pages long. They just approve the 2 pages and stick it in the back of the book. And this has 2 amendments to it over. And after that's 2 minutes, you can put them all in the book, which you re-adopt the document. Now, that's quasi-judicial. Quasi-judicial, excuse me, I'm making a mistake. You couldn't tell me that. A rezoning, they don't know.
If it's a zoning case.
Why not? Excuse me. All right, I'm making a mistake. Okay. All right. This is right. A rezoning amendment is changing zoning from R1 to R2. Special use might be for a quick trip or something like that. Those cases are quasi-judicial. Meaning, you're not supposed to talk to neighbors or go, you can listen to them and thank them for telling you, but hang up, don't talk. Just be polite. All right, next up. Now, the statutes do not mention this. I'm a person who did it. I write in the zoning regulations that you annually review them. Now, that's just about you put it on your agenda, you turn to the zoning administrator and say, what problem do we have? The zoning administrator should be marking in the zoning book changes, things that might be needed. Now, the reason I've done that is when I was director of planning, we had to write subdivision regulations for each subdivision. When we went to the public hearing, the developer group appeared, and they said, we don't like any more regulations than are necessary. But these are good regulations. But the problem with government is they don't keep them up to date. Now, just think about it. It's important to keep things up to date if you're going to work with developers. Okay. Now, we put in the idea that once a year, that you put that on your agenda and consider. That doesn't mean you change something every time, but you know that that section's not good or something like that. Everybody got the idea. You should keep it up to date. Okay. I'm not going to read all those to you. You can start looking at it, but this is the quasi-judicial procedure. This is in the 14th Amendment to the Constitution, the law. They have to be fair and impartial. You get rebuttal. You have to allow the applicant rebuttal. Now, here's more like what I'm going to say. You all, that's on a good word, but anyway, you have to do the matters to be considered. They're better called factors. In other words, in your book, here's all your material. You can see it work on. I've read it all. This is your comprehensive plan, your zoning regulations, your local agreement. Now, in your zoning book, it has 10 items that are factors that you're supposed to consider in all of your zoning cases. And in all of your conditional use cases, it has a list of them. I'm just telling you, your minutes do not show your work. Now, also this. If you don't put in the factors on the basis of what you did this, and why you did it, it's automatically turned down by the court. I've been there. And is there any questions on those? But this is one of the most important things. In Alabama, they had a case, and it went on till 3 in the morning. The county commissioners meeting, geez, now, 3 in the morning. They have so many people. They have so many people here. They have one room for this, and then other people stand down in here. They passed them overhead. Can you imagine lifting back up and asking him? He did. It's in the court case. You think that's reasonable? So, but that can. I've had people in which they had to listen outside the door. to the window during the case. Don't do that. It has to be reasonable and orderly conduct. When I was director of the dog, we could fit about 90 people in the room. And when we couldn't, it was set up to go to the electric company where we had 506. Because they were allowed to be tested. Okay. Look at the importance for it. Okay. This is, again, the words about the matters, and that's the same thing as factors. Now, the factors are things like what's the current zoning, have there been any changes in the area? Is it detrimental to the neighborhood? Is there utilities available? All these kind of factors. And you need to answer them. Now, I'm going to look at the county commissioners and who all's on the council. If you have a case that goes from the planning commission, and the planning commission recommends it, and the governing body will turn it down, they have to vote by a 2/3 vote to do it. Now, once they've done that, everybody's looking at him, I thought I was wrong. The county commissioners hold the case, and they can vote against it, but they have to change the reasons. I mean, you can't vote for the same reasons for it, and the same reasons against it. So you have to come up and change the factors if you vote against it when you hear it at the governing body level. Is everybody? I'll repeat it if you want. Okay? Yes.
So when you say change the reasons, and it brings to memory a case that the planning commission recommended that an ethanol plant be approved. It came to the county commission and we voted it down. Okay, so what are the difference in the reasons? Why do we have to change the reasons? I guess because the planning commission was in favor of it. We were against it. So it would have been different reasons that we were against it than they were in favor of it.
You have the right to do that and so forth, but you have to put the reasons why. There's two things, evidence and factors. You might find that I didn't know there was no sewer there, or we can't extend it. We just know the movie. On the other hand, but you need, I testified as a witness, and you can't go it. Now, who's a spoke? I used to, every time I went to this county, I'm trying to quietly, politely, trying to tell the county clerk to do a better job on putting in the zoning things at the county level. It's been on for 2 or 3 years. And finally, somebody now, who has money, millionaire comes from California and sues them on 5 zoning cases. How many did they lose? 3 of them. Because she left out the factors. I kept telling her and telling her, you've got to put the factors in if they approve it. And they didn't. Automatic can turn around and do it over. Okay. Next time. Now, this is an important thing. All right. Proper notification. And I've already illustrated that to you, $8.4 million in the case. Okay? You've got to get the notification right. First of all, publication is required. Now read it. Sometimes the paper makes a mistake, and you're going to look at immediately the next day and see it. I just called somebody this week. They forgot to put in the ending part about an inch. They cut it off. Doesn't have the name or the date or anything on the bottom. Something we need. All right. So you put in the time, the place, the date, and I don't put in the day of the year, Monday, Tuesday. I got it wrong one time. No, it's extra work. Put in the day, the date, time, place, and so forth. Now, the mailing, it is not required to be certified. At the present time, you all are having, this is very unusual, and I congratulate you. It's legal to do it if you want to do it. Your regulations require the applicant to mail out the certified list of people for notification. And I admire that. I can quote it. I looked it up. I can do it. I want to, but that's taking a lot of chance. A lot of people, they don't open certified mail. I know it's a problem to them, maybe, or something like that. But, and you can continue to do it. If you want to put it in, we'll put it in. But you're the only person in all of Kansas that we ever worked for that had people do it on their own music. Now, the list is the registered deeds list. The people who own the property, the deeds, and their name is on it. That's what we're right about. Now, the mailing, remember, is correct. If you put it in the U.S. mail and have the address that's in the recorder of deeds office, you've been right. If it doesn't get to them, too bad. But you've done it. Now, all sorts of, I can spend the rest of the evening telling stories about what people mess up. One time somebody sent one out to someone, and they got the case later on, and somebody came around later and wanted them to sign a protest petition. And she said, what for? And she said, oh, we haven't got the notice. What notice? She found out that her college son had brought her mail in and found it and thought he would look it over for her and took it with him, and she never knew about it. And and so it went back and had to be all referred over again. I can tell you, like I'm going to come. David will be out of time if I tell you anymore. Okay? It's supposed to be you.
We got a down phone.
Okay, now, signage. Now, if you want to, you can put up signs. I'm going to show you a picture of it. Now, why is notification important? Why is it important that it's done properly? If one person misses it, you do the case over again. In Pratt County, they had a $360 million wind farm. And they did 358 notices. They got 15 of them back. We turned out, I told them to write them a letter immediately and asked them if they would agree to waive the 20-day notice now. Because they some wrong. Turned out they were all in California. I'm just saying, and that way we didn't have to send out 358 again. And every once in a while, you can kind of correct it, but basically try not to get it wrong. Now, most people would go to the title company and get the names of everybody within 200 feet of water. I don't know, do you have a title company in town? Okay, no, not do it, but it costs money. Some people want to do it themselves. But if you want to continue to do that, that's fine. I just think it's taking a good chance for people that they just have to get one wrong. You come to the meeting and somebody will say, my mother didn't get it. And you have to start over again. Notify. All right, next up.
Just one other point there, if those items aren't met, basically, you don't have standing to do the case. So you don't want to proceed.
Okay, this is just a sample of the sign. These signs can be very inexpensive. I don't know if you need it in the city. You might want to put it in the county. And you don't have to. There's nothing in the law that says you have to put the sign. But some cities, they have this to go ahead and board it. Well, we'll show you some more pictures later. Go ahead and tell them.
What you're looking at here is the notification area of zoning case. The red rectangle there is the property that has an application for a zoning case. The 200 feet is the minimum amount from the statute. You can make it more than that if you want a broader notification. So you run that 200-foot perimeter, any property that it does touch, the yellow there, those will get notified. And that's inside of the city. If it's close to the city limits and it extends outside, anywhere that 200-foot touches, including that large parcel there to the left, is going to receive notification. Here, if the property is adjacent to the city limits, it kicks in 1,000 foot out into the unincorporated area as the notification area. And here it's purely out in the unincorporated area, 1,000 foot, all the way around every point on the property, you're notified. Here, this one's outside the city. If the 1,000 foot touches the city, then it switches over to the 200 feet. Now, Kirsten mentioned one this afternoon that was interesting. Well, what if that city limits line was a county line? And the idea of that is, if it goes outside the county, you go ahead and provide the notification.
Good. Any questions on it? Now, we have notebooks and things that monitor that have them on all these maps. You can make a copy and give it to an applicant, but it helps them speed up to know what the notification right there. Okay, yeah, next one. Now, it can be corrected if the person is willing to waive the 20-day notice, because they're going to get 15 days or 10 days. Okay. The 20-day notice is extremely important. Hutchinson did something in 19 days one time. They had to do the whole case over. This is the last month I notified somebody and seemed to appreciate that I told them. But they had advertised it for 19 days. And I told them, it's illegal, you gotta, not going to start over. And so it's very important you do it for 20 days elapsed. You put it in the paper September 1st, you wait 20 days, and on the 21st of September, you have your hearing. And you waited 20 days. Okay. Maintain continuity. When you finish saying you want to continue a case, be sure that you make a motion, not just say, we'll hear it at our next meeting. You don't know, right? You don't know when the next meeting is, do you? So you need to say the second Thursday of the month, 7 o'clock, in the courthouse, or wherever you might be. And once you do that, you heard me do it. I said, you don't have to put it in the paper. or do anything. Because on the notice you send out, it'll say, this case may be continued from time to time without further notice. All right, reduction in land area. Let's say that you came in and wanted 10 acres to be rezoned for commercial, and began to think, well, maybe I don't need that much, and you just wanted to approve 5 acres. That's fine, you don't have to re-advertise. But what if you came in and had 5 acres and moved to 10 acres? You gotta re-advertise. Anytime you go up. Okay, next time. And this is important to the city particularly. If annexation is not necessary to hear a case before the planning commission, you can bring part of the county in the incorporated area and not have an annexation. But when it gets to the governing body, they have to annex it first before they hear the zoning case. Because it is in their city. Everybody got that? Very important. All right, next up. Now, you might annex something to the city, it can remain as a county zone until the time it maybe goes to the city, the county, the city, or the applicant they want to change the zone. So it can come into the city temporarily, let's say, as a county zoning case. Just stay there, and they enforce it as a county case. Don't have very often, but it's something that can happen. Next time. Now, this mentions the 17 factors that I've been talking to you about that we put in zoning. Now, a lot of those are for the purpose of factual information. One of them might be, is the property plan? It's a question. And that's important to know. And so, we make a list. Okay, I'd say about half of the 17 that we put in are fact things. Can I be hooked up with Lawrence here? The other half are things like really affect the value of the neighborhood. Appreciate the neighborhood, things like that. Now, those factors, we have there's none there, there's no known, but this particular, the Supreme Court of Kansas said that you had to have a day listed 10. The whole 10 are in these 17 I'm talking about. We just had some facts that you get to answer. But you've got to do it, and currently it's not an easy minutes. All I would say is, you see, any cases like that, and we went to court, the judge simply says, well, the facts were listed, and therefore you start using the case is turned out. So the minutes, and you won't like this either, the minutes for the planning commission have to be actually more detailed than usually the governing bodies are. The governing body can make a motion, and that's it. But the planning commission has to tell why they do it. Is there any question on that? The governing body has to have the minutes and receive and file the minutes before they hear the case. they're in trouble. Now, I guess I'll tell them this. If you get into a situation like I did, 2 or 3 months ago, we had to have the zoning change immediately for them to bring in this new farm. What we did to amend it was, we had the planning commission meeting after 20 days notice. They were ready to approve it. The governing body sat right next to it. And as soon as the planning commission finished, the mayor called them to order, and they voted favorably on it and published it the next week. Otherwise, they would have taken 54 days to do it. And you can, I've done that for subdivision, where they have data. Now, remember that for zoning case, for rezoning district, you have to wait 14 days. So people can protest. But if you're just changing the zoning word, you want to speed it up, you can actually do that. I don't encourage you to do it all the time, but if you have an emergency, that's the solution. All right. These are all the things that you can do, table something. If you table something, be sure it's for certain date. Any questions? I don't know, should we take a little break if people want to, have 10 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well,
So 30.
be back in about 45 minutes.
These guys all leave? They down the hall? Do what?
It feels a lot more.
From here on, we're gonna move fast, and we warmed you up. But some of these other things you need to know about, but not in the details. You read about them later. But we need to get to the last 5 anyway, so we're gonna kind of move ahead. The table of comparability is a part of the state statute. In other words, you have to have in the back of your zoning book, and you do, the list of zoning districts. And then if you come in and say you want to be in the industrial district, and later on say, no, you're not going to buy with the business district. Well, you can do that without re-notifying or publishing. If you came in and asked for a business district thing, and then later said, oh, no, I don't work, I have to have industrial, you have to re-advertise. Whenever you go up, you see what I mean? The same thing with special use. Anytime you change, say you go in and you want a retirement center, and you begin after a while to realize the hospital will be better, you gotta go back and change it. Here again are the importance of the minutes. And you need to have good minutes. We can provide you with some sample minutes. Okay? And, Vern, next time.
I think we can mention the governing body.
The governing body doesn't have to hold us, okay? Once you have the public hearing and have a good set of members, the governing body does not hold another public hearing. They listen to anybody who wants to talk, but it is not a public hearing. And by the way, this is off, anyway. I always suggest to you that whenever you have a hearing, have people come to a podium. I don't know whether you do that, probably informally would. It makes people realize the seriousness of what they're saying. It makes them feel it's official and formal. It's also, you can take the meeting, which you take, take the machine up, whatever you do. But I always like to see people work.
Got a question. So you're in a meeting, a hearing, and you've got half the town there. This is a town of 1,600 people. We got 500 people in this meeting. Do you let every one of them speak? And do you put conditions on, do you put time limits on how long they have to speak?
Okay. Well, I want to give you 2 answers. Remember I was telling you about the landfill stuff? And we had 66 people in 4 lines, from 7 to 10 o'clock, 4 lines. And the lawyer, who was very well known, called Pat. he basically said, you gotta let people get it out. You gotta, it helped everybody to talk about it. They're very happy about it. And if you said you only have 3 minutes, you make them mad with you. So it's better if you can give them the circumstance. Now, we would put in the bylaws for you if you like, but the chairperson can say, well, we've got 25 people here tonight, we're going to be too late. I'll say 5 minutes for everybody. Now, they can tell them what they do, they're on TV, so tell them what you do.
The way Wichita Secretary County works is in their bylaws. They have that the applicant is 10 minutes time to their case. Then anybody who wants to speak has a maximum of 3 minutes. Then, if it's kind of a contentious deal and some people just aren't organized, the chairman of the planning commission will go involved. They can give somebody an extra minute, that person. If it goes beyond that, then you have to look to the planning commission and say, well, here's a motion from no time for something to carry it out. When that's all said and done, it's important to have a chairman that doesn't meditate and say, we want new information. Bring new information. So that's one way to quell hear the same thing over, which I've seen work pretty well. The other is have a sign sheet. If they don't sign up on the sign sheet, they're not going to talk. Unless some action by the planning commission says, well, yeah, please come forward. Then when that's all said and done, they have a 2-minute rebuttal time for the agent or applicant to come back and address the questions that have been brought up. You can do it again.
You can always ask questions of people too, to get the information. Many times the chairman has to know to be able to say, well, let's say, the person can say that and say, I agree with the job. So next one is the legal protest, 14 days. And we've already talked about 20% of the software. And the 3/4, remember the 3/4 about how you vote. Let's go. You want to show them that?
This is if you do, you'll hear people out there grumbling about we're going to protest it and that kind of thing. People will feel aggrieved by it. The red is the applicant's property, and you do again a notification area, in this case, inside the city, 200 feet. And you go ahead and tally this up, the areas there that you take out for the right of way. So you take that out, and then the blue there represents those folks that are protesting. In this particular case, the protest did add up the required amount. In this case, 49%. So therefore, it's a valid protest, and that triggers that greater vote, 3/4 vote at the governing body level.
Okay. This is what, again, what we talked about is that the governing body approved, disapproved, or they can modify. If you can modify what the planning commission does. And you have to do it by what? 2/3 vote. If you change the planning commission's actions, it can be by 2/3 vote. Or unanimously, you can turn it to them. It's pretty important, so study that. Next one.
Well, I do want to mention one other thing. We talked about this afternoon, is that when you do have a zoning case, there's really 3 choices. You can approve it, you can disapprove it. I call it, rather than modify, I say you can improve it. And that's what I want to challenge any of of the planning commission folks here, when you're in the case, if something just doesn't feel right, and I know where I sit is, there's a lot of guys that they just want to prove stuff. They don't want to get down in the weeds too much and so forth. I remember some landfill cases and other things that we've taken out. My situation, I'll look at it and say, wait a minute here, what if we lowered the height or something a little bit, it wouldn't impact the neighbors that much? Or what if we, really good example is a Santa Club that went into Wichita. This thing, you would not believe the folks that showed up against it. They go up against 350,000 plus houses on it, dollar houses. And by just saying, well, wait a minute, what if we did this certain type of buffering and we figured it all out and folks can't see and blow all the trucks and stuff like that? That's what we're at. So you can improve something, and that's another theory or concept about zoning. Think of zoning as making things possible. You're not trying to create a zoning law. You're just trying to do something so that you can improve the value of that property and you improve the community over time.
Keep getting robocall.
Yeah, that market.
Okay, this, we pretty well covered this, but the idea is that if you vote on something and you change it, you have to make different findings, is what it's saying. And remember that any protest petition requires a 3/4 vote. Now, how do you change, let's say you have a condition. Now, I mentioned this to the zoning people, but I'll mention it to you. I used to have trouble, how would I do a condition? And I'd sit there. I found that all you have to do is think of a magic word, that. That the applicant do this. That the city provides this. That the, just think of that and you can think of a condition. That's required. Now, if you have to change the condition, let's say that somebody comes back, in fact, I remember somebody came back one time, by the way, I gave you the wrong legal description. It was part of my next door neighbor or something. So they had to do it over. But when you do it, you only do the condition. You might have it approved for an airport, but it comes back. All you want is to consider the height of the structure and something like that. So you only have to do the condition, not the whole case again. Next. Now, remember I talked about preemptions. This is a real problem. I've talked to Steve a bit about it. And if I ever had the time, I'd make a list of these myself. I don't know to do it, but all of these, for example, you can see billboards, for example, the state has a sign booth, handles all those on state highways. Liquor store. If you have a liquor store, you have to have a permit from the state. If you have private clubs from the state, salvage yards, state, sanitation, the firearms, you're not allowed to do them in your city anymore by zoning. The Attorney General sent out an opinion that you have to have them all done by the federal group that does it, firearms and so forth. So you can see how much more difficult it is because you've got all these, for example. If you do a dog kennel, you have to go to the states and get them back. Like that. So this is not easy. And I've suggested you make a list of these groups of people. Manufactured home. you're required to have a manufactured home somewhere. Well, that's maybe a little bad or good, depending on what you think about it. But if you have restrictive covenants in your agreement, you can control the manufacturer. Mobile homes, you don't have to put them in. And I talked to the other staff people about the idea that you need to remember how they're taxed. Remember, a regular home is taxed the value of it. Usually goes up or stays the same. But a manufactured or mobile home goes down every year. Percentage comes off every year. So some of our clients, they'll say, we only accept them 5 years old, or 8 years old, or 10 years old. So you can do that for zoning. Next, vesting. All right. Vesting is done in terms of platting. In other words, if you have a residential plat, it used to be 5 years and it's now 10 years, that the city and county cannot change the rules on it. We do in the new zoning code. But if you have a plat and it wasn't 10 years past, it wouldn't change it. Next one. Now, there's no existing vesting in zoning. In other words, if you have business zone and 5 years from now they find it isn't working and you could idea, the city or county can change it. You're not promised forever. The zoning will remain the same on your property. Now, you can change the zoning, and you have a reason to do it, let's say, and you can do it. About this one, be careful. Sometimes the governing bodies, they're going to build things or let things be built or be involved with state and federal buildings and all that. And they forget that it might involve zoning. So don't go ahead and approve something to build a library I'll talk to you about when you find that it has to have the zoning permit. So remember, there's a second thing in case you mixed up. Yeah. Quasi-judicial zoning. This is how you do rezoning. Is having a case for R1 or R2 or something like that. It's rezoning amendments. And then you have I call them special use, you call them conditional use. You have to have 20 days elapsed to advertise, 14 days to go to governing body, 30 days to go to the court, 30 days to the Supreme Court. This is the way it works. You can have publish the resolution, the ordinance, and everything. Any questions on that? If you want to read about it, you can go to KSA 1257 and so forth. Okay? Next one. Now, if you have a rezoning one, again, this rezoning case, these are 4 things you should consider each time. Does it need to be platted? In other words, if you have a piece of land and you're going to put it into 4 lots to be sold, if you have subdivision going on in the city, it would have to be platted. But let's say you have an apartment building, 1 lot. On the zoning case, you can require them to be platted. If you have a layout, somebody's going to put up 10 apartments in the building. It's pretty good to have it flat. And you can require them to do that, even though they're not dividing their property. We have a court case that says you can do that. You can also dedicate land. We have a court case that says that. So if you look at somebody going to build a shop and say, we're going to do some back and forth, only a 50-foot right of way. You can come back and require them to add 5 or 10 feet. The right of way to make a bigger street. Annexation, if you live in the city, you can require it to be annexed. If they want to be, given them from. And then they will talk to you about on site plan approval. Now, a special use case, you can require just about everything. And that's what makes it hard. In other words, things that aren't going to work, you can say, well, now, if we require say, Sam's correct, you didn't say it's all because we didn't say. All buildings. Because he suggested. Now, all of these things were just ideas that you could require them to do. And people might be worried about, they want to be really short.
Well, that's kind of like our conditional use permit, right?
Yes, you can do the same thing on the conditional uses. Right. I'm gonna tell you this now before I forget. This zoning book has in about 20 conditional uses. And they list things like, sanitary landfills. What else? What are the
Commercial feedlots listed.
Yeah.
Now, it lists these for all your zones. Your R1 zone can put in a salvage yard, a feedlot, if you want to approve it. Nobody does this. It's supposed to be just what's allowed in that zone. For example, we might allow parks, churches, you see what I'm getting at? Again, this is the problem. It's like nobody actually did zoning to answer some of the things that are in your book. As I told you, the examiner has exemptions. It says that you can do exemptions. Now listen, there's not in there. That's what was amazing. I didn't pick out every one. I picked out about a half a dozen bills right to. I don't know how many dozens are in there. People doing it. Well, okay. Next one now we're going to talk about the board of zoning appeals. Now, here's something else. What we put in zoning regulations, it will list the special uses that you want for that zone. But it also, the rest of flexibility, it says, other special uses not listed as a conditional or special use. In other words, if 1 year later, you find that some special use that you never did before, what do you got to do? How long it takes to change it? It takes 54 days to advertise it, to So it's all done and published and everything. And what are they gonna be? They come in and say, I want to build X. And you say, well, come back 54 days from now. So where are they gonna be? They're gonna be in Canada, they're gonna be next door. You see, so we put in the other uses, not otherwise listed. You can hear them as a special use. And you have full control over them, and you don't tell them to buy, come back. This is illustration of the Board of Zoning Appeals. Okay, now, what we're suggesting, all of our clients now, except one, combines the Board of Zoning Appeals as the members of the Planning Commission. And the one that will do it, they have a lot of BZA cases on fences and things. They have 9 really good people who want to do it, and they just want to keep doing it. But after a while, I'll mention a few years of trouble. But all the Hutchins, Parsons, remember, they have combined with God. I used to be on it for 15 years. They combined it into what they did. Because you can do it in one time. Now, it's independent. Once that you have a motion to create the Board of Zoning Appeals, you are independent of the Planning Commission, independent of the governing body. You vote on it. And if anybody doesn't like it, even the city or the county, if they don't like what the BTA does, they got to appeal it to district court. Because they are independent, so that, okay, now, I'm going to tell you, I asked, she had a company name or Christian. Christian. I asked her if she would go to her local church and bring me black robes tonight. Get choir robes, so everybody can put them on. And she didn't do it. Now, I went through the Philadelphia City Hall one time. You know, the mayor and so I walked through and I looked at one. Said, I looked in and there, the members were sitting there all with black robes on. And I looked over and saw Philadelphia Board of Zoning Appeals. Now, what am I conveying to you? You are semi-judges when you're the Board of Zoning Appeals. Think of yourself, in other words, instead of sending it to the court, it's saving you money to send it to the Board of Zoning Appeals. Everybody got that? It's so important. Now, you can have, I talked about closed sessions, it's quasi-judicial. You need rules of procedures to operate with. You can have periods of time. In other words, if you do a variance, it can be good for 18 months. Because you don't want the neighbors to be buying a piece of property 5 years later and find that there's a variance waiting to be done. So you can do that. Now, what I'm trying to get to here is the appeal goes to district court. It's what you put in the book. It's not in the statute. It just says that you have to have a certain date. You put them in the zoning book, 30 days is good. So they have 30 days to do it. And if they don't do it, now I was telling with the hunting court. I told you about the hunting.
Well, in the afternoon, we talked about.
On the afternoon. And they are claiming, I'm on a court case right now, 3 hours of deposition. 3 they're claiming that they didn't file within 30 days. And that would be the issue to the whole thing. So you have to do it within a certain period of time. And so on. And these are the three things that the planning, that the board of zoning appeals does. First of all, an appeal from what decision the zoning administrator does. If the zoning administrator made the decision that you couldn't build a home lodge, they could appeal that to the board of zoning appeals, and if they had some good reason to do it. Most of the time they don't. I've only been on 3 times in the court on the board of zoning appeals like that. They don't appeal what the zoning administrator realized after a while in their life. But if you do it wrong, it can be appealed. Secondly, variances. Now, all variances are numerical. In other words, it's the number of parking spaces you have, it's the setback you have, and so forth and so forth. In other words, it has to be this like a sign. If you want to put you've got a love sign on it, it's pretty high. But say they wanted one and they have good reason to do this in the first. They needed it to see all right. So the variance was approved to raise one, way up. The exceptions we've talked about. You could have a section called exception. And you describe what those are. For example, you might allow a child care center in a church by an exception. But if you don't listen, you can't do it. There's no motion. So it doesn't mean anything, but you're nothing. There's any questions on that? It's very important. Okay, variance is approvable. Now I'm going to move along. There are 5 conditions. Excuse me, let me try again. These are the dimensional ones that you can have. The next item then begins the 5 conditions the factors that you have to answer. Now, if you say no to any one of those questions, you have to turn them a variance. And remember, a variance cannot be self-created. You can't create the problem and then say, I need a variance. All right. So you can read that one and the next one. And now we're ready for the next one. All right, now this is how the BZA operates. Remember, it's quasi-judicial. The appeal of variances and exceptions are filed with the Board of Zoning Appeals, 20 days notice, and they grant or not grant. They don't approve or do things like that. They grant it or not grant it. And then they fill out a resolution. The resolution is handed to the zoning administrator. And that starts in 30 days. In 30 days, if you go to the district court, or later on in the Supreme Court. Now, the next one. And this is why I like the idea of combining the groups. If you have a case, you might change the zoning on somebody, and they still need a variance for some reason. Well, you can't do it. You have to wait to whenever the Board of Zoning period meets 2 months later, 2 weeks later, or something. This is all in one night. It also makes it easier for you on something. You do it one night. And you make this motion, the planning commission, somebody will make a motion to recruit the planning commission, sets the planning commission and convene the board of zoning. They do their act. The chairman runs the meeting, they're independent, they take the minutes with it, same minutes. When they're finished, they make a motion to rejoin the planning commission. And then you go right along to the meeting. So you can save a lot of time that way, get it done, people only come, maybe it's the same person, they don't have and the neighbors, the same neighbors. So it's really very nice to have one night to do it. And, now I think it's more important that you do this because you don't have that many cases. I mean, you don't have that, and Clinton counties don't have any. Well, I would strongly recommend you do that. That would mean I'll suggest you have 7 people. Now, who is again from Coolidge? Okay. Now, you could be a member, your city could be a member of the planning commission. They could put one of your members on and you would appoint. Your governing body will appoint somebody to be on the board. They want to do it. And maybe keep it within 7 people. I think it's not like 6 and 8. You have to go to 9 if you want a lot of counties. Because there's a lot of people out there. You could have 9 people if you want to. You would have 1 member on the board representing you. And now, okay, I'm going to cover this now. I've suggested that Coughlin Coolidge be in there. You know what I'm going to say, you ready? You're going to become a dumping ground. If everything else is done, anything that's something you don't want to do, I have to go through it. Had somebody put a mink for it and said, I couldn't get it elsewhere. It turned out, but you see what I mean? It really is a problem. And again, you have a limited number of people. It would be hard for you all to have 7 members or 5. You said, well, we wouldn't have a case once a year. No. So it would be to your advantage to do it, and you know some of the and they would have to put the city in the local agreement. You're governing body votes on your cases. You make it on your own decision, but you have to have a planning commission to do it. All right. Subdivision, they just go through real fast, but I don't know that the county needs subdivision. It's good to have, and very inexpensive. We do. There's a lot of it. But I think for the city, there might be an advantage in having a subdivision committee. Otherwise, they can't handle a plat or something. Go ahead, and there's just a.
Now, I'm going to move through this pretty quickly since it's something you don't have, but just so you can become aware of this. Think of subdivision regulations as a cookbook or a recipe for putting together land parcels. One thing we talked about this afternoon, at minimum, it would help if somebody wanted to do what's called a lot split. If somebody had a whole 125-foot lot, and they wanted to turn it into usable parcels. Well, what you do is you go to your zoning, and it'll tell you you need a 25-foot setback, you want this range used to be a certain width. Well, you look at this parcel and say, okay, how can I divide that up so that can become a zoning lot? But then this is the statute that provides for that cookbook. You do have to have a comprehensive plan in place to provide for zoning for subdivision regulations. One reason is that, you need a land use element that can speak to some issues that are tied up in subdivision regulations. Sketch plans are something that's done very simple. If you just, want to get an idea across, it is very rarely done. Again, a real simple drawing, doesn't have to be done by a professional. This is where you step it up a notch and typically what's done is develop a preliminary plan. And this is the process of what you go through to get approved. And sometimes you don't need a subdivision committee, the planning commission, to do that, but it's a plan. Think of the preliminary plan as gathering all the information about parcel one. It's going to look at the drainage, it's going to look at floodplain, it's going to look at the right of ways. So anything you can find out, for example, I'm always impressed how the surveyors find all these inconsistencies. They'll find fences in the wrong place, the property corners that are off, and it's just very interesting stuff. But anyway, the preliminary plat gathers all that data, gets it on the drawing. And then you put it, you can choose to go ahead and do a final plan. And this is the process for that, but the key about the final plat that I want to show you right here is it simply shows the dedication that go into that land part. We're talking where the rights of way is going to be, which would be related to your subdivision regulations, or the width, what are the easements that are going to be used by utility companies. Do you need to have some reserve areas that provide for drainage and things? So it's important to remember that when a governing body looks at the final plan, they're not approving the plat, its layout, or anything like that. All they are looking at are, do we want these dedicated for land use and development in our community? Lot split is different. You can see the procedure for that. To begin, there's some notification to adjacent property owners. And again, you have in your subdivision regulations the requirements for doing a lot split. It might relate to how wide should be lot length. This is where your zoning and your subdivision work together. Let's say you found that this was in a residential zone that had a minimum of lot width of 90 feet or 100 feet. Well, the subdivision is going to make certain regulations. You have to create a lot that also meets the zoning regulations. This is just some information related to street layout and the hierarchy of streets that are thought about when you're planning. This relates to getting intersections safe for folks in the community if you're going to plat a piece of ground. Same thing here on layout of streets. Vision triangles is an important thing to consider on for safety relative to signage, landscaping. Even addressing, you need to work with the postal folks to make sure addressing is done properly. There's different types of subdivisions. And I'm just going to mention the last one there. Do you all have an annexation waiver? If someone wanted to say city water or something, do they sign a piece of paper that says, if the city gets to us, that we're on compliant annexation? I'm compelled to use an example. Right. One community did a comprehensive plan form during the process. we found there were 69 parcels in and around that community. They were mainly giving out water or sewer. These folks had an expectation that the city was gonna go out, and this stuff had been in a long time, and make all these repairs and do all the upgrade the system and everything. This is part of it, they weren't even paid for. I mean, anyway, another community, they had more people living outside the community than they did inside the community. That's what we found out in the
Didn't we see that there was some people outside the city? And then we saw the Syracuse sign. I guess some people that aren't in the city. Did they have their water and sewer?
No. That would be something you look at during your comprehensive plan, and it's a discussion that needs to be had with county, as to what's going to be your policy. And again, I'm afraid of that. There was a book written called Survival in Rural America, fascinating book. And basically, we find that the communities that don't face this issue and don't want to address it, they're the dominant. So, you know, we got to face reality at some point. You just can't keep giving away all these facilities on it without folks helping them. That's my soapbox. We've talked about investing, off-site improvements. Let's say you have a big drainage issue or something on a particular project. You can actually have an improvement made that is not even on that site. That might be some sort of infrastructure, it might be something related to the grid, because the more water can be cleared. And I'll only mention one item here. If you do get in a situation where somebody wants to do a fire, I can't overstate the importance of the development agreement. One community we're working for right now, they, for the past decade, have spent the majority of their annual budget on dealing with the debt created when the developer was bankrupt and left the entire subdivision where they had to put in all the improvements. Just because they didn't follow the regulations and just didn't do it.
They all are, they ended up bankrupt. Is that
Vacation cases. Those are where, let's say, like here for the school, there's a platted street out there, but you find you don't need that as a right of way. You go through the vacation process and turn that property back over to the school. Complete streets is just a concept about when you're planning for streets, make sure you think about everybody. Kids, older folks getting around, how to make it walkable and safe for them, and same thing on bicycles. And you can look up some of these things and see interesting solutions.
I keep waiting this year because we're starting to follow this. Reminding me, I use the word government. I can't forget the idea that one time David and I were out to investigate a community that the county said needed much work over the zoning. And we drove in the first street and just stopped. Here was a person that had an old model home. And he was building his house on top of the model home. Can you imagine what that would look like? And we just, you know, we just couldn't believe it. I mean, anybody would building just right over the side and everything. Weird. Now, Okay, David's read it out, and again, he made me go faster on this one. When we talk about briefly this site plan. Now, this, site plans are currently kind of the, not luxury, but it's the advanced thing if you want your community and want to look at. And, it can be done very simply in some cases, but you can show you that, it makes things possible and otherwise we might not work out.
Well, I just mentioned it here at the beginning. If you look at that, now it's a community, and if you look at an aerial photo and you look, at a community, imagine, for example, this particular community was founded in 1872. 248 years later, or 100, whatever. How did they get created? It all happened because of actions by folks like me. And decisions made very slowly over time. Using the comprehensive plan and these tools we're talking about, you can make good decisions over time to really impact what your community looks like. We've been real fortunate to work with the city of Andover back in the 1980s. And if you drive through there, you can see the effect of regulations and how they really take the site plan review to heart on it. But the main reason I mentioned it to you is typically your zoning regulation, you're going to have a screening requirement. And that would be whenever a land use is put up against residential, it's going to be required to be fencing, landscape, some sort of buffer. Well, site plan takes you to another level in that you can, on any project that comes in, they're going to have to do a site plan to show you what they're doing, but it allows you to talk about it, and then you'll find it's another one of those tools if you want to make the project possible. You're in the tough discussions and all that, someone will say, well, if they bring back a site plan on to the zoning administrator to look at, we're going to be okay, this is going to work out. You move from disapprove to improve and approve that. So you're flexible making that. Another thing to mention related to site plan is you're thinking about what's happening in the street there. Look at all those different elements that impact what a community looks like. And it happens just in that few feet from the street to the property line and the building itself. I'll just mention one thing from this definition here about establishing criteria and what a site plan is. It tends to fit projects in the community through careful thought and consideration. It's simple as that. If anybody wonders, can you do this legally? This is the statute, but if you look at number 4, control the aesthetics of redevelopment or new development. You can talk about what a building's going to look like. You got one right now, they're going to go to the effort, and the applicant even said we want to do that, we're going to put some masonry skirting. This happens to be on the downtown Main Street. And this is in a community that really is hurting to have something happen. There are other regulations in place that help you with aesthetics and the look of the community. You can see them here. I mentioned screening and landscape, but site plan approval is the most effective. The city of Sterling has done a good job after they got their comprehensive plan done. If you go up towards the north end there, it has some new commercial development of the college, and they're now talking about a plant. You can do stuff in subdivision regulations for aesthetics. Do y'all have a tree board or just a city? Every 3 points. It's just another one of those things that is very easy to do. You can work your budget within the city. You go out and do some tree trimming and stuff like that, and you can call that part of, going from Tree City USA, for example. Doesn't cost you no money, but it begins to get a sentiment of we are beautifying the state of our community. Now, the 4 here, those are the nuisance codes, the basement and housing codes, those are after the fact. That's when it's already happening. You don't want that. You want to be out ahead of the game and try to make them money. So what do you want the community to look like? Even how industrial areas look. For example, setback requirements. Say the big sand. Matthew's had it in the site plan place. He could have looked at that and said, where? We don't want that to be what people remember about us. And it's going to stick in my head, let me tell you. On a plan, it could have been required to be 100 feet back. Any stockpile of stuff. You can do stuff with parking. You can do all these things here that are provided to improve the over time. So here's a whole laundry list, and you can read them. I'll just mention quality attracts quality, and site plan review makes progress possible. Now, earlier we often talked about you got one chance to get it right. If you have a site plan requirement, it gives you a second chance to get it right, because you're going to look at it and make sure it's the way you want to be resolved.
I have a question. So, a conditional use permit, or it was a permit it was actually a zoning change. Was approved years ago. Part of the conditions of that was that in lieu of fencing, it put up natural trees, okay? So the trees never developed, there's no trees there. So that this site plan review, can we go back to that original zoning change and make some adjustments to that?
That's the beauty of having an enforceable document. If on that site plan, it says you're gonna plant 5 shimmer oaks in this spot, you go out there and the administrator, wait, there's no trees here. All I have to do is send a letter saying, that there needs to be 5 shimmer oaks here, in order to keep your zone. There's lots of landscaping benefits. This one happens to be stormwater runoff, so we didn't have to spend a lot of room to read around the green. You can see the elements here. The site plan that gets talked about. Those are again, how do you get all that arranged and make sure it's gonna work for the community? And you're also thinking about how it's gonna work for the applicant and make their business work better. And then relate well to the community.
Oh, that's what he was talking about. If we haven't granted the special use permit yet, then what we have in our document now, can we go, if we do that, can we do that site plan at gravel? I mean, that storage pit can get closer to a house or something? Just like it wants just agricultural use, am I correct? So if we change that under a conditional use permit, can we say that by planning in it, or are we going to too late to do that?
As long as the regulations provide for you to make conditions, I see no reason why you couldn't require site plan. You just won't have the bullet list of how you do it and what's in it. But you can sign that they need to submit to the zoning administrator a site plan for review, or in a tough situation, you can say a site plan shall be, submitted to the planning commission for review. Vic, you see, you don't want to do that in condition. So, how do you want industrial things to look? This was a mistake from the get-go. Now, look at the maintenance problem just created because they avoided issues of how to deal with storm drainage and things like that. It could have looked like that with a little bit of forethought and site plan. You can do things that look like that, and you might have heard of earth drawing on. Do you need to consider those pedestrian paths? Walmart has to face site plan and screening too on, this is up in the northeast part of the state. I'm just kind of running down on the importance of fixing up planting. You mentioned the trees or lawn and stuff like that. On the upper right there, some folks are not planting as many pine trees, concerned with pine willow. But two things, you gotta think about evergreen, and you gotta think about drought tolerance on top of planting. But in the end, you can really affect the future appearance of the community over time. Again, I use Andover as an example. You know, to see this stuff in action. Any questions on the site? Oh, for example, one community, we got that down in the booklet, where it's only a page and a half of the document. That's how simple we were able to keep it. That they chose to do a site plan, they just go to the page and a half of the document and gives instructions on how to do it.
One of the things that I'm always watching when I drive around, if you go to Wichita, you go to the road coming in through the north and start your way going around towards Augusta, a circumferential arc, and half of it is designed by one company, and it'll have like 5 trees in a row. And if one of them dies, you notice it. David designed the other half on the forest. If something dies, you don't even know what it is. I'm just giving you an example of how important it is to be. The other thing that we haven't mentioned is about the virus. We need all the greenery we can get to encourage people to go out and walk, bicycle, go to parks, things like that, and exercise. Now, we're ready for zoning programs. Now, look at the first thing that slide. Yeah, look at that. I suppose you might think that could be.
They asked if you took that into account.
We saw those. That they're selling cars. Possibly. Let's look at the next one. What's that? Okay, now why is it trying to show me? Years ago, when I was in law school, I still kept working. And I remember going to a nearby county and rooms filled with people that were deciding whether to have zoning or not. And a group of people appeared in the back of the room. And were representing how long. And they brought up the fact, they said, you don't need zoning. You just need a statute to control nuisances. Because you don't want those, right? Now, what's the problem with that? You have to wait till the nuisance happens. Zoning will say, wait a minute, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to allow But with nuisances, you gotta wait till it happens, and then you gotta clean it up, and take them to court and all this, and that was their argument about not having those, so that's why. Now. All right. The only person in the whole world, you know what I call the world today? What next? All right. The zoning administrator is the only person in the whole world that can approve or not approve your zoning permits. Nobody else can. Every once in a while, I have cities that you bring to the agenda of the city and all that. And the way the state is set up, the zoning administrator, now, that person then, they can appeal it to the board of zoning appeals if they do it wrong. That person, he or she is the only person who can appeal the case. To the board of zoning appeals. Now, the person who does your zoning can inquire of anybody. If you're an expert blank in a certain thing, he can come to you and find out if you have some ability to. But he's not coming to you whether to approve or not. We have a case for somebody, I was zoning administrator. And you couldn't believe it, but this one fellow was always giving him trouble. And we noticed that he put all these business signs on the grass area next to his house. It was on the right of way. And I showed him a note saying he was in violation. He ended up taking it to court. He said the mayor said he could do it. So you believe he paid money to go to the still in court? Close to $8,000. All because he said, the mayor didn't do it at all. The mayor might have said, well, I don't know what the mayor said, but he didn't approve or disapprove. He just said, the zoning administrator approves, he disapproves it, and so. Okay, and if the governing body didn't like it, they'd have to appeal to the board of zoning appeals and occasionally happen. All right, personal liability. Your zoning administrator, as long as he or she does it in good faith and without malice, they are liable. And who is liable? The city or the county. So again, if you don't do this right, the government body will taxpayers from This next one, I'm not going to take time, it just shows you the layout of the corners and setbacks and all that. And then down here, this is the way the zoning is enforced. In other words, the zoning administrator has, let's say if you tell somebody to remove cars or whatever the problem might be, they have 30 days to appeal that to the district court. Now, if they wait till after the district court, they're either going to be sent to the municipal court or they're going to be sent to the district court, depending upon how important it is and if it's a court of record. In other words, the district court is a court of record, the municipal court is. See, the next one is the grandfather age. I sometimes say grandmother, okay? The most important thing on here is that making the zoning happen before zoning is put in. Now, that's where I'm going to go again, congratulate you that you call this for to do this, to protect yourself, to your citizen. Because once it happens, they are grandmothered. And they're grandmothered forever. Unless they want to change it or do something to it. Now, I write in here, if they close it down for a year, they've lost it, and things like that. But once they have it, it can go on, and if you have a community, I worked for one that didn't have zoning for about maybe 50 years, something like that. You can imagine what it was. This is what I meant by zoning. It can happen. Okay. Legal non-conforming zoning, next to the stop. This is just a suggestion when we install it. I suggested to the zoning people that you talk to the zoning body and the planning commission to be smart. If you see somebody out pouring concrete and starting to build something or something, you have to be aware of that or look for the law or anything, let the zoning administrator know. Because the sooner you get to it, the better. It's like I was telling you, they didn't know the water, the sewer line was under their building. They got, if you notice, can you believe the guy who built the concrete building? We went ahead and built it. Usually they're out of town. Okay, now. Okay, now we've got the remaining time, and this is the report. I don't know how many of you got the copy that I made for you, but most of you have. These are just a brief review of it, and if you want to make comments and so forth. Look on the number, first of all right. Look at all these things down to zoning. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now, again, I'm repeating what I did at the beginning of the meeting. I'm sorry to tell you, because I'm proud of it. I'm glad you did what you did. But remember, every one of those, I can tell you, I was telling the county attorney, I'm not signed up with the bar association, but when I'm doing training, I'm allowed under my law degree to tell you that. Every one of these has a law problem, which you have. There's problems. All of these are good ideas. But for example, you don't even have bylaws you require to. So I suggested that the floodplain management and the airport zoning regulations be put in the back of your zone. We're stuck in the middle of your zoning. They have different resolutions laws. Why are they in the middle of the book? You should be never making sense. They don't have to be. Steve is ready with new revised airport zoning regulations. And I talked to him earlier when we first started, put them in the back of the book. So that way you only are changing, you can find them and so forth, not in the middle of all these things I've written down, whether to update them or do new ones or whatever. But I'm proud of what the efforts you've done. I'm not saying that you need to focus on your need because you value the community. And this means that over the years then, if you knew how many things that people try to do that are weird and strange, and then you don't want to live next to it. Okay? Now, right now, it is happening more than any time in 48 years that we've done because of the virus. There are people who can't afford the mortgage for their house now. So they want to live in back of their business. one fellow in one town, he put a cot in the back of his bar before the car. But I'm just saying, it's happening. And that's why your zoning is even more important now. We are working now to make it more flexible for them. Monday night, city we worked for since 1993. I've written a thing in which all grandfathered property can file for temporary special use. Just think, you see, this is a community for 50 years and so it has garages around where the house is going down. What are you doing? So they were using it for commercial storage, things like that. I put in that they, as a temporary, almost special use, they could use the building. They couldn't have parking, they couldn't have stuff outside. We had to notify the neighbors and everything. And they just they're going to employ 3 people. Build some small items and pay taxes and so on. And so their town has a number of grandfathered properties that can be renewed. Now, normally you wouldn't do that. You see. But they like the idea, they're going to get employment taxes, but we didn't do that. More people want tiny homes. Really, 400 square feet. You can see some pictures of them, you've got pictures of them. But they're different kinds. Some of them can be on the wheels. Some of them will put on a concrete block. Others are on loose, no tax. But anyway, all these things are happening. So your timing is good to do that. Now, let's look here. Let's do one thing and we want some questions. Administrative form. You see that listing? Okay. And now, I'm going to put them over here on this table. Hope you may want to come up and look at it. But this is for a city with extraterritorial jurisdiction. Now, these books all have the software goes with it. So your zoning administrator would get a hard copy plus the Word software to be used. You can email it to the newspaper. You can email it to the applicant. You can put it on your website. That's how good it is. That's how we like it. Now, first of all, one is simply for the, I'm trying to be as fast as I can. We used to have people who would put things on planning, over there, and nobody knew where they were. Like this book, for example, to adopt a comprehensive plan takes 5 documents. Now, how many documents do you think we found in Europe? We couldn't even figure out that you had a public hearing. I'm not being tough.
We were busy.
Can you imagine how legally, if you may have, if you have no right, Christian, raise your right hand, right? You see what I mean? See, you got good stuff, but the comprehensive plan is a goal. It's all promise. A good start for it. Now, we have a book that you can put everything in, including in the back of it, you can put all the things that you saw David have a picture of that shows you how to do the numbers. You can, this is for zoning and so forth. Who's the chairman?
We got lots of chiefs here.
Who's chairman of the planning commission? I told you you had a good hat. I didn't say you had a good hand. Okay, now, in here, okay, I'm gonna. If you go through here, and I will speak this up. That is looking, that's the problem. We used to have assistants, and we would communicate people, say you're doing something wrong. They were supposed to tighten their tie. They would almost choke, so. So we can't, so, in here, for example, you will have a notice that tells the applicant, we have talked to you, and I'm sure some of you, and I know people who have done more, this is pretty tough. This is not, doesn't sound easy. But putting it in these books makes a difference. For example, here you have the notice for the applicant. First of all, you have a checklist for yourself to make sure you do everything. The zoning inspector. Then you have the applicant's notice for them. Then you have the applicant's engagement to the city. And so on. You have a notice and tell us how to do your permits and everything. The permit, you got to stop using building code. Because you don't have a building code. See, it says zoning and building permit. You don't have a building code. You misleading. I just don't like that. Okay. And then we have all the forms for enforcement. Letter to the person, tell them there's a violation. Tell them if they're doing it wrong, we turn it over to the county attorney. For whatever you see, take it record and just what they do. But all of that is in there. Now, for the chairman, I'm going to give it to her. Here it is. Okay. You would have a form to do a complete special use for someone. You have all the 17 factors listed there to fill in. And then you go to the chairman. And there is your entire checklist for everything you have to do at the meeting. It has, you call on the, is anybody who's qualified for prejudgment or anything like that? Does anybody talk to anybody, things like that? That's on here. Ex officio. It has a complete list of you call on the applicant, the rebuttal, the people, or whatever. And if you want to do 5 minutes each, you can do it. You can put on it. And it says, come to the podium. Something like that. And then in the end, we have all the motions, all that we ever heard of that you could do. There's 6 possible motions. All here. Now, what I'm trying to do is trying to relieve your mind of knowing what all this complexity is. This is what helps you. You see? All right, now, you need to think about getting this done. I'm not talking about us. We'll do it. But I'm just saying you all need to do this because everything so far is really cool. Well, let me put it this way. It would not be found in court. And so, now, they were going to tell them about the timing on, you have to consider timing on the comprehensive plan. On the-
Population and demographics is an important part, and it doesn't look like anything's going to be available until the end of this year. And, you know, even possibly after that, the true
Did you hear
However, some of you might have heard of what's called the American Community Survey, and those are done within 3 to 5 year time period. So we can get information that starts in 2018 that's available. So a question would be, you know, we definitely going to have 2010 stuff, but we moved up to at least 2018 that. And then depending on how long we want to go in terms of developing plans and documents, you could push that until the full census data is there. What are your options? If you want to get this done and get things in place quickly, I would go ahead and work with this 2000 American Community Survey information. And then when the 2020 census is fully available, when you do your annual review of the comprehensive plan, we've done this for quite a few communities. We just grab the numbers and plug these into these tables that we have. We send it to you, you slide it back to your comprehensive plan, and you back up and run the current information. So it's really up to you is how long you want to wait until all that data is available.
And what you need first is to redo if you want to. And remember, we do what you want. You're suggesting that we do. And we tell you what the law requires. And we would suggest that you definitely need to redo the interlocal agreement. That would be another call. Vincent, could you know how many trouble with that? That's when my daughter lives on Coolidge Street. In other words, you need to decide that they need to put in about joining the board of zoning officials and that. And take out the bylaw stuff that's sticking in there, not many, but some. And then do bylaws. So those can be done, you don't have to wait on those. I can see it would be in 2022. Till you get into zoning or maybe subdivision. We would recommend subdivision. You probably wouldn't use it maybe every 3 or 4 years. You use it on vacation. You can use it on lot splits. The other thing on lot split is somebody has a recorded lot, but a big one. That's what we were doing on the way out to the friend. We call them answers to questions. They have something, somebody has a big lot, 175 by 104. One goes, they could put 2 duplexes on. We figured out how to do it. We call them both. But there's lots of uses. So there are things that you could do if you had some of these regulations. If they're not costly, you would should.
I just want to point out, unfortunate that, and I believe Kirsten is kind of, they offered us to take us around a little bit tomorrow. So we're going to get to see a little more in depth, the cities and the county. The benefit for us to get a look, better look at some of the things is it's going to help us fine tune and kind of figure out what kind of costs we might be with it. But we're going to do our best to try to track how we want to pull this all together and figure kind of range of costs on this kind of effort. And our goal is to involve you as much as possible because, like I said, this is for you. And so we really need that input to really get it right. So that we meet your needs.
I have a question. My question is, they said that the county and the city work together on zoning. How does the county and the city deal with the problems of houses on the edge of the county or edge of the city? And how do they coincide together to make it a, I guess, you call it a beautiful neighborhood? Because there's pieces of city and county that I just worked in today that doesn't have a site. Beautiful, or beautiful site, whatever you want to call it. How do you work with that? If you can figure that out,
Well, I would like to understand part of the country, and follow the city group. And then what we look at is what's happening, what's the size of these parks? And then you get into questions of, and the tough question is, does the city go grant it? You know, or what do you say would be going on? And so, again, it's a gradual thing,
it's a hospital project, yes, is what it is. It's got water, city waters, some cities here, not cities here, some of the streets are city maintained, some are not. It's just a hospital project.
now, this may be something to think about, is, you know, it's great for all over the country. I mean, you know, being out in the country is fantastic. But, when your budget to the city, you gotta think that. And by that, I mean, you look at all the utility things, you look at some person, and then you go, wait. Had we, at that time, an extraterritorial subdivision jurisdiction, City of Mulvane is a great example of that. You could have talked about how would that parcel have been laid out, even if they're not even going to be in city. But the county has to allow the city to have this little free area of development, and like when you do your zoning district for the county, we often do what's called an A1 transition district. And that's where you put those lots in there, so over time, if you have that subdivision regulation, you can clean up over time. But there's no negative answer.
Well, I'm glad you said clean up, because that's what some of these places need. We need regulations and rules and zoning rules and regulations for some of these places that don't grandfather this on case. That's what I mean. Listen, you're showing that's what I'm talking about.
It was one you start up earlier. I did mention that the city has common zones and the, I don't know what that means. And the county has 11 zones. No city could never have a county that had 11 zones. You can build your city out there. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, is it your thought? I mean, you realize what would happen if you just go open it up and let it happen? A mile out, you build a quick stop in the city. You can build anything outside of your city, if you can build in your city. The way the regulations do it. No one ever will go through it. Never.
Well, I think what,
You see what, it's so dangerous.
well, I think you definitely given us a lot to think about, but I think our respective groups we need to sit down and talk among our commissioners and talk among the city, because, you know, and just gotta get more of that, what we think we need, and I think in the back page, we listed some things. What does that mean? That's what we want to look at. But give everybody a chance to kind of digest it and then make those decisions. Do we want, you know, to just have one board and stuff? And that way we'll get that back to you. And we're glad you're going to get to drive around to look at our county. You know, like I say, we all have a tendency to show what we all don't like. But we do have a, you know, a nice place on the sand part and stuff like that. But we'll have a lot more questions because it's just something that we're here for. But what I'd like to tell everybody is that if you would like to visit with the Fosters as you leave, that's great. I do need to kind of get you all out of the building. You know, don't leave before you help me put the tables back, and I got to carry a few things down the car. You know, the custodians are pretty nice, you know, but I think we were getting close to where we think. Well, thank you for coming. I want to thank you for the information. I think you might have scared us a little bit, but anyway.